Indications emerged yesterday that the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, and the leadership of the Dangote refinery may be making progress in their 3-week negotiations on in-country fuel supply, with the national oil company now requesting to deploy its permanent monitoring team at the facility as part of the deal between the two entities. Also, it was learned that the president of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, has now accepted to sell the refined petrol from his 650,000 barrels per day refinery in Nigeria's local currency, the Naira, as part of the agreements reached with the NNPCL. Vice President, Oil and Gas, Dangote Industries Limited, Devakuma Edwin, disclosed this during an X-Space event hosted by Nairametrics and monitored by This Day. Edwin at the session discussed the progress made by the refinery in the production of premium motto spirit, PMS, commonly known as petrol, stressing that the NNPCL had informed the management of Dangote Group of its intention to station a team of 6 to 10 people permanently at the $20 billion refinery. Edwin said NNPC told the management of the refinery that the team would be overseeing the production and buying back the products in Naira, since the national oil company would be supplying the crude. He added that the request aligns with the NNPCL's aim to closely monitor the entire process, ensuring consistent crude supply and efficient processing while securing a steady flow of PMS for the country. All right, so good to hear that we now have some progress in this regard, Dr. Abati. Your take on this story?
Okay, a number of issues here. The first issue is Edwin Devakuma, the vice president of Dangote refinery, saying that, well, as part of the ongoing negotiations with the NNPC Limited, NNPC Limited is now saying they will station 6 to 10 people, at the refinery. Don't forget that this is not new. There's nothing novel about that. We have a regulatory agency, the one that is called the downstream and the midstream and downstream petroleum regulatory agency. Before the PIA, we used to have the DPR. That's why I say there is nothing new. You used to have the DPR, at the old refineries that stopped working 28 years ago and have been undergoing, turnaround maintenance that seems to appear endless, perpetual, to the consternation of Nigerians. So if the DPR, now known as midstream and downstream petroleum regulatory agency, says it wants to have a desk, there's no problem with that. It follows logic. After all, the Dangote refinery is located in an export-free zone, export trade-free zone, in Lagos State. So there you have a number of other stakeholders. You have customs, you can have regulators who will be there for the purpose of transparency. What would the NMDPRA be doing there? NMDPRA will be looking at, okay, the quality of crude that is received, the processing, the quality that is taken to the market, the cost, will be monitoring the cost and all of that. However, Nigerians have no faith in all these regulatory agencies. Was it not this NMDPRA? The word used in the report that we read out is NNPC, but there's a regulatory agency there. We should identify the appropriate regulatory agency. Were they not the ones of old, of DPR, who did not keep proper records? Our expectation is that even as they say they want to have a desk in the export-free zone, that there will be transparency, there will be accountability, and we will not have a new regime of corruption as we had in the past. That's the first issue. The second issue, raised by Mr. Edwin Devakuma, is about ongoing negotiations. What the minister told us is about October 1, they will have fixed the pricing system. They need to work out a commercial framework and the delivery system with the Dangote refinery. NNPC, in this regard, being the major monopoly involved in this. But NNPC has issued a statement saying that they are now going to transact business on a willing buyer, willing seller basis. So, but they have to work out the commercial framework. How much crude will NNPC Limited supply, at what price? All of that has not been worked out yet. The Minister of State Petroleum had talked about October 1. Is it by October 1 that they will conclude the negotiations, or is it by October 1 that they will start the negotiations? Now, that is important, the commercial framework. The third point that Mr. Devakuma made in that text-based interaction was that marketers, only about 3% of them are patronizing Dangote. In one report that I read, he said, look, this is a clear indication of sabotage, that they don't want to do business with Dangote refinery. Hence, they are compelled to export most of what they produce. That they have the capacity to produce up to 54 million liters of refined petrol on a daily basis to meet domestic demand. But if you have the traders boycotting the Dangote refinery, the question is, why? He says they don't get the supply of crude from NNPC Limited. Not yet. So they are forced to buy from abroad. So what it means is that at the end of the day, they will sell at international commercial rate. The key phrase here is what NNPC Limited said last Saturday through a statement by Femi Shoneye, that it's a willing buyer, willing seller framework that we have. However, the question is, government has a responsibility to resolve all of these issues, and we keep making the point that the Nigerian government has a responsibility to provide an enabling environment. Dangote Refinery says they are willing to sell at a loss. I don't know about that. If they are willing to sell at a loss and not make profit, then, of course, the traders, why would they boycott their product? So that's the gray area there that Devakuma did not explain.
All right, so 1st of October seems like a good day to start that, because that's Independence Day. And so maybe that might be the day Nigerians will get independence from the persistent fuel and PMS scarcity challenges that we've had so far. Dangote has said, Alhaji Aliko Dangote has said that, well, his company has said that they are willing to even sell in Naira and at the risk of making a loss, because by the time they get crude from NNPCL, purchase from Naira and then sell back in Naira, by that time the FX fluctuations might have affected prices and profits. But let's see how this will work out. We still wait to see those gray areas made clearer. But right now we need to head on to Maiduguri. More than 30 people have died and 148,000 displaced in floods in Maiduguri, Borno State. Thousands of residents are at risk of acute hunger and waterborne diseases as they remain trapped or missing 3 days after the floods. Rescue efforts by the state government and the military have been hampered by lack of equipment and the inaccessibility of some of the areas. Arise correspondent Ferdinand Duroha reports.
This is the popular Lagos Bridge in Maiduguri. It links the city center to towns bordering the capital. Half of it has been submerged and commuters are forced to share the remaining lane. There are also visible cracks which raise questions about the integrity of the bridge while still in use. The heavy flow of traffic is caused by residents who are moving to internally displaced camps on the other side. Heavy rains have caused the Alao Dam to overflow and break its banks, leading to flooding as much as the capital has never witnessed in decades. The State Emergency Response Agency has been coordinating the rescue alongside the military deployed to assist in the emergency. The flood has left a large part of the state capital and its environs without electricity, and thousands risk infection due to water contamination. Hospitals were also affected. The University of Maiduguri Teaching Hospital is one of the largest in West Africa, with its capacity of over 1,300 beds. But it also houses one of the most reputable cancer centers in the world. However, like its neighbors in Maiduguri town, it is not spared from the destruction of the flood. The chief medical director tells us of the damage.
I think the first concern we had is about the patients. We knew that the patient wards are downstairs. All the laboratories are downstairs. So the first emergency evacuation we did was all patients that can move out, we discharge them. And those that cannot move, we have to all take them upstairs to a higher level so that the water cannot affect them. And also about the patients that are coming in, people that are coming in, it's difficult to stop anybody from coming in because the gates are wide open. Water is coming, rushing into the hospital, so we cannot even talk. We have our own internal staff quarters that is housing about 250 families. So all the staff quarters were also taken over by water, so we have to think of, as much as we're planning for the patients, evacuating the patients, we have to be working on how to evacuate the staff also to get a safe place upstairs. So everything that we do is moving patients from ground floor to upstairs to look at emergency, things that can come alone, because once there is this type of flooding, electricity is off.
Like most parts of the city, the hospital is without power and has operated with alternative energy, particularly solar. It takes us on a brief tour to see things for ourselves.
Yeah, this is the postnatal ward at the University of Maiduguri Teaching Hospital. Postnatal means this is where after delivery mothers are kept, and you can see it. Even despite the water level have gone down, the beds are empty. We have to evacuate the patients upstairs, and you can see it's still waterlogged. This is the radiology department, and is primarily for diagnosis of diseases, where we have a CT scan, MRI machine, mammography machine, X-ray machines, fluoroscopy machines. These are all expensive equipments, and you can see it's all flooded. And
with thousands devastated due to the flooding and at risk of infection, cleanup exercise has begun so services can resume. Our next point of call was the Bakassi internally displaced camp. Thousands of persons evacuated from flooded areas have besieged the camp. Officials are having a difficult time controlling the people.
Yeah, this is the Bakassi camp that houses about 14,472 IDPs that were affected by the flood disaster. We have about a 400 housing unit that was earlier built by the government. But as a result of the earlier insurgency of Boko Haram, the houses were not completed. They were formerly used as IDP camps for Boko Haram victims that have come from faraway local governments that took refuge. If you can recall, the government has closed down all the camps before 2019. And now, unfortunately, another disaster happened, and we had to use this place to house the affected persons that were affected by the flood.
Adamu and his family are lucky to escape. They were asleep when the house began filling with water in the early hours of Tuesday.
I was fast asleep when my wife woke me up and telling me that she had some people talking outside our house. So when I went out, I found out so many people trying to check out and bring some of their belongings out from their house. And what I suddenly found out is when I moved a bit further, I find a lot of people rushing out from their houses because of the flood.
Meanwhile, governors from neighboring states have been visiting to show their sympathy. At the moment, rescue operations are still ongoing, with many still stranded. Thousands of persons here, many of them women and children. They have lost their homes and livelihoods. But sadly, many of them were victims of the Boko Haram insurgency and were just beginning to get their lives together. Now, they have been thrown back into IDP camps because of the disaster. Ferdinand Duroher, reporting from Maiduguri for Arise News.
Thank you very much, Ferdinand, for that report. Ferdinand will be joining us very shortly. He's on ground, and he'll be, one of our correspondents actually will be joining us very shortly. But before then, Dr. Abati, really sad to just see the number of people who are now displaced, internally displaced as a result of the floods, and even the institutions like the hospitals also being overrun by floods and the impact of that. A lot of calls have gone out to, to respond to this emergency and ensure that monies are spent to rehabilitate the people and restore at least communities in Maiduguri as soon as possible.
Okay, the state, Kwa State, has a responsibility to help these people. Because as we were trying to establish in a conversation yesterday on this same program, this has been caused more, not by natural causes. This is not necessarily an act of God. This is an act of negligence on the part of the Nigerian state and relevant authorities. And that's why we were arguing yesterday that there must be proper investigation. The people who have caused this should be brought to book. We were told that between 2023 and 2024, over 171 million naira was spent, supposedly, for the rehabilitation of the Alau Dam. But nobody did what they should do. And now houses have been submerged, facilities have been disrupted, over 20,000 people have been displaced, lives have been lost, a lot of problems, you know. So the investigation is important. The need to address negligence in this particular case is important.
All right, so we have our correspondent now joining us from Maiduguri for updates on the flooding situation in Maiduguri, Borno State. Our correspondent, Sunny Adamu, joins us. Good morning, Sunny, and thank you so much for joining us. So tell us, what is the current situation of things in Maiduguri? Is the death toll still rising?
Good morning, all. And the actual situation is that, search and rescue operation is still ongoing. As you can see behind me is one of the major highways that was devastated by the flood waters. As you can see, people are trying to come out. These people that you see behind me coming, they are trapped for 2 to 3 days. So because the water has started receding, that's why you see them now coming out. As for the death toll, we have seen some report yesterday that over 30 people have died or 34 people. But on the course of our reportage yesterday, we were able to interview, the DG NEMA. He said up to now, there is not any official statement of the mortality rate. He says all efforts have been made to see that they have evacuated the people that have been that were affected, and thousands of people have been evacuated, and the rescue operation is also ongoing. And the devastation is beyond measure. It's massive. As you can see by my left-hand side is the popular zoo. You can see how it's been ravaged by the flood waters.
Well, but in terms of the immediate needs of the people, what is government providing? Over 20,000 people displaced, animals have disappeared, houses have been submerged, and we hear that there is a threat of an outbreak of diseases. What are the immediate needs that you see government addressing?
The immediate need of people now at the moment is food. Because even if you go to the camp that they lodge these victims, you will see them trooping out, expecting that you brought them something to eat. So their immediate need for now is food, and the government is providing food for them. And yesterday, the government has, sent some delegations to go and access, the number of people that are in the camp, so that they will start cooking food for them inside the camp.
All right, so how are the authorities responding? I hear you say that the government has started responding to the need for food for a lot of people. But how about the emergency response team, management agency in Borno State? How about the healthcare authorities? How have they been responding to the needs of the people?
Yes, what we saw in the camp is just a mobile clinic. As you know, even the hospitals, the two major hospitals that we have, State Specialist Hospital and the Teaching Hospital Maiduguri, has been ravaged. So they have a temporary clinic inside the IDP camp for immediate, response.
All right, well, thank you very much for bringing us updates. We will certainly be joining you again or speaking to you again in the course of today's program here on Arise News, just to get updates. And we do hope that the people who have been unsettled will find some resettlement by authorities responsible.